Standpoint of the way that Congress is setting up right now, even to the casual observer, it seems like the parties are pulling further and further apart, not moving more to the center. I mean, you obviously had been known as somebody who tried to work the center more than most people. Do you see any hope that the Congress can actually get anything substantive done in the way it looks now?
It's there's a possibility of things getting done. The question, there's a two-part question: can they get something done, and will what they get done be the best thing they could do? I'm concerned. There is an attitude, and I could give you sort of three very brief anecdotes. There's an attitude more prevalent on the right now, that they are right about everything, and compromise is a dirty word. Someone won a primary recently and said his definition of bipartisanship is when I can get the other guys to agree with me. And I talked to Pat Toomey. I was the only Democrat to attend the Heritage Foundation retreat when I got there. I thought, shoot, let's go, let's learn, let's be open. The only Democrat I went, met with Pat Toomey, who later ran Club for Growth, now a senator from Pennsylvania. He's a really bright guy, and I respect that. So I said, look, we're both freshmen. We're here to try to solve problems. Let's see if we can work together. Pat's answer was so telling, and it took me aback. He said, I'd be happy to work with you on anything you agree with me on. Truly, with no sense of irony, no sense of, I mean, that'd be funny to say, actually. You can imagine somebody saying that and then going, nah, we'll find a way to work. He didn't do that. There was no, isn't that an ironic, funny thing to say? It was an inherent assumption. And Heritage asked me back, coincidentally, to after the change in Congress this year, after the election, they had another retreat. And I was asked back as a Democrat to talk about what it takes to be an effective legislator. And that was with two colleagues on the Republican side, and I said, look, you can run on rhetoric, but you've got to govern on reality. There are good people on both sides. There are good ideas on both sides. You'll find bad ideas and bad people. Find the people you can work with on both sides. Deal with the reality more than your rhetoric, and try to solve problems. That was sort of I'm being a little more brief, but that was it. My two colleagues on the Republican side basically said, look, you got elected because you're right. Your politics are right, your policies are right, the other side is wrong. What we stand for is good for the country, what they stand for is bad for the country. The worst thing you can do now that you're here is compromise. Don't compromise with the other side, don't compromise with your own leadership. Compromise is weakness. As soon as you compromise, you lose your power. Truly, this was before they're sworn in, and I thought to myself, goodness, how possibly can we do this? I mean, and you can pick your issue. And there is some intransigence on the left, no question. But right now, that attitude is more prevalent on the right, and I'm sorry to say it. It's not a partisan statement. I think it's true. And that, the problem then back to the second part is, so maybe if those guys get elected and get a majority in the Senate and the House and a president, they can do some things. But there's the next question. Will it be in the best interest of the country if one group is 100% sure they're right and there's no merit at all to the other guy's argument? I don't think that's true on either side, and that's what worries me.
Well, is there any solution to this?
In my book I say that if I could do one thing, Lou, it's campaign finance reform. And there's no easy, the only way to do that, and it's not elegant and it's not easy and it won't happen, but exacerbating all of this is the influx of independent money made even worse by the Citizens United decision, in my judgment. There was plenty of independent money, and it came in on both sides in my races. But the idea that now as a candidate or a member of Congress, you can spend 2 years of your life begging people for money in modest amounts, and then at the end of 2 years, some guy you've never met, who's not even in your district, gets his or her checkbook out and writes $2 million check in 30 seconds. I mean, truly, that's the state of play now. You can spend my first year back, I was raising money till 11:30 at night, East Coast time. Nearly every night. to raise the 2 million that I knew would be needed. Now, all that time away from family, away from constituents, away from issues is obliterated by one guy with a checkbook. And those people are tending to write checks on extremes. They're not saying, I want to elect you because you're a common sense problem solver, you're going to bring people together for the good of the country. They're saying, in some cases, it's Sheldon Adelson saying, because I want you to take my stand on Israel. In other cases, it's the Koch brothers and whatever they're doing. Or on the side of the labor unions, they may write the check and say, nobody touches certain labor laws. But it will drag people farther apart and make everything sort of worse.
But do you think that if we reform, even though you said it's not going to happen, but even if that did happen, I mean, at the end of the day, I guess what you're saying is we need to elect more people that believe that compromise is not a dirty word.
Yeah.
And if there was a campaign reform, would we elect more?
I don't know. I mean, the key for me, if there were, it's a great question, Lou, and it's one of the great questions right now in our political system. For me, what I came to believe that the issue for me is not necessarily D's versus R's. It's reason versus irrationality, and there's irrationality on both sides. What I'm looking for is independence, reason, and responsibility. And those three things are sort of, by responsibility, I mean we don't kick the can down the road. We don't say we're going to leave it to our kids to solve, which we're doing with the budget deficit on both sides of the aisle. Again, a little more compromise on the Dem side than the R's, but still not fully accepting the implications. The reason issue is where you come together and you say, look, we got a $15 trillion debt, we got a $1.2 to $1.5 trillion deficit. That exceeds our discretionary spending. How possibly can you solve this with just tax cuts alone, or with tax cuts for goodness sakes, or with spending increase? You have to cut spending and increase revenue. You have to. The math is there. But that's reason. That's not rhetoric. That's not ideology. And then in the independence case, take, for example, the folks who've signed Grover Norquist's pledge. You know, I will never increase revenues. Now they're backtracking a little bit on that. But how can you solve a problem if a priori you rule out any one entire part of a solution? And as a candidate and as a member of Congress, you're consistently gut checked on a host of issues, and campaign contributions are tied to it. I had a group tear up a $5,000 check because I voted for free trade for Oman.
But at the end of the day, if you're saying that the parties essentially are telling the new members compromise is weakness, it's a non-starter.
Yeah, I'm not saying the parties are. I'm saying that was what I was hearing from the incoming crowd of Republicans at that time. I'm not hearing that so much on the left, on the Democratic side, which, I mean, that there are intransigent ideologues on the Democratic side, but that has become a dominant force in the Republican side. And this is said as a guy who quite sincerely, not in the traditional Capitol Hill sense, really, I have dear friends on the Republican side who I really admire and respect and have good ideas, and I could work with them. So this is not a blanket, all Republicans are bad or all Tea Party guys are bad. But anybody who says, I'm 100% right, you're 100% wrong, it's going to be really hard on either side. That's what I think most voters have to say. Now, interestingly enough, there's this sense of, well, by God, he stands for something. Yeah, but I'm not so confident that I'm 100% right about anything. And it's very hard to work with people who are.